So the first guy I want to talk about is way back in the 1500s. He wrote a book. It goes by two titles, and you can look it up, and the book is free to read online. And it's called How to Live to Be 100 Years Old. Or the other title of the book is Discourses on the Temperate Life. And the guy's name is Luigi Cornaro, L-U-I-G-I-C-O-R-A-R-O. And he was a guy, all these guys I'm going to talk about very briefly, and it's not giving these guys justice. Every one of these, I'm not giving them any justice, but I'm going to spell out their names. And if you want to do a deep dive and prepare to have your mind blown, enjoy, because all this stuff is on the internet. And I'm going to bet there's going to be some guys here you might not have ever heard of in your life. So Luigi Cornaro was a guy in his 30s, and he was very sickly, and his doctor basically said he was ready to die. And he ended up changing his diet and ended up living to be 100 years old. I believe he lived to be 100 years old, not quite sure on that, but he lived a ripe old life where in his 30s he was ready to kick the bucket. And so it's a wonderful book, and it's free to read. Next guy is Cornelius, C-O-R-N-E-L-I-S, D-E, Langen, L-A-N-G-E-N. Cornelius de Langen was a doctor from the Netherlands back around the 1910s decade, 1910s, 1920s, I believe. And from the Netherlands, and the Indonesia at that time was a colony of the Netherlands, and he was shipped out there. And one of the things that he observed was that after being there for a while, was that the indigenous people suffered completely different problems than the people from the white peoples. The Dutch, especially in relation to heart disease, where with the Dutch it was very common, and with the Indonesians it was not common whatsoever. Okay, the third guy is a guy named Clive McCay, C-L-I-V-E-M-C-C-A-Y. And Clive McCay, I'm going to say around the 1930s, did studies on mice. And with these studies, he was able to show, by restricting the calories of these mice, they were able to greatly extend their lifespan. So that's Clive McCay, 1930s, caloric restriction. In addendum to that, there's a guy named Dr. Roy Walford, who he was the head of the Biosphere 2 project. And he did further research on caloric restriction, and he himself practiced it. And the group that evolved out of that are called cronies. Okay, next I want to go up to a guy named Dennis Burkitt. If you've ever heard of the cancer called Burkitt's lymphoma, he's the guy who made that discovery. But his claim to fame was he realized how important fiber is in the diet. And in Africa, he was out in Africa, and he saw that same thing like the Cornelius de Langen, that the indigenous peoples had no heart disease. We're talking about the Bantu Africans. No heart disease. Year after year after year. He did end up finding one case, and it was a maid who was a maid for a judge from England. Otherwise, there was no heart disease year after year in the whole country. Diseases of Western civilization. So he's very famously known for fiber and eating fiber, and you know where you get your fiber from. Next guy I want to talk about is Walter Kempner. Walter Kempner worked for a guy, or studied under a gentleman that won the Nobel Prize in medicine, physiology. Came to the United States, and he's basically the guy who put Duke University on the map, because he did a nutrition program. It was called the rice diet. So he put his patients on the rice diet, and back then there was no medicine for high blood pressure, and people who had really high blood pressure, it was a death sentence. And Walter Kempner, through his diet program, was able to get these people down, their blood pressure down, people who were diabetic. Some had got cured of diabetes. You know, this whole thing of diabetes being cured, you're starting to hear it all the time now. But, you know, it wasn't too long ago, the American Diabetes Association said, once you have diabetes for life. Well, now people are bringing their A1C down. And if your A1C is down, you're not diabetic. And it's happening all the time now. But at one time it was said to be an incurable disease. But he was able to do it strictly through nutrition. And one of the things he did was he was actually people who had retinopathy in the eye, was able to make that much better. And he went to a conference, and he was actually accused of switching the slides, the before and after. So he quit going to these conferences. Great results. Next guy, and this is my hero of all these guys that I'm talking about, is Nathan Pritikin. Nathan Pritikin wasn't a doctor, and he had heart disease, and he cured his heart disease. His story is fantastic. He wrote a book way back in 1975 called Live Longer Now. And I recommend reading pages 17 through 70. And what he said back then, one, that you can reverse heart disease. People back then said, no, it couldn't be done. And he did it on himself. And the way he found out that his heart was better was through a stress test. And there's just so many things. And of course, when you had heart disease back then, you were told not to exercise. Oh, if you exercise, you know, you're going to die. And eventually he ended up running, I believe, about 8 miles a day. He started off running in Tom McCann loafers, or loafers and shoes. I'm guessing back then they didn't have tennis shoes or whatever. And the number of things that he pioneered and the wisdom that he had, and what he had to fight to get through. Just an amazing, amazing man. All right, going on. Another guy, Dean Ornish, back in the 70s, people who had heart disease. You have the controls and you have the people who he put on his strict diet, plant-based diet, very low fat, under 10 calories for fat. Where was I? Okay, Dean Ornish, putting people on a plant-based diet, low fat, and the controls, they stayed the same or got worse. You could check their blood flow with a PET scan, and 99% of those that did the low-fat diet got better. And the PET scan, what it was able to do is measure the amount of blood flow to the heart. Dr. McDougall basically synthesized all this material and popularized it, showing that a high carbohydrate diet is the diet that we're meant to eat. M-C-D-O-U-G-A-L-L, John McDougall. Okay, next guy is Dr. Esselstyn, E-S-S-E-L-S-T-Y-N. You know, I'm briefly mentioning these guys, and it's almost not doing them justice. But his book is, I believe it's How to Reverse and How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And he talks about a multi-year experiment that he did. And just with amazing results. And he was the doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. All right, and the next guy is T. Colin Campbell, C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L. And Dr. Campbell went to China and did studies among a massive epidemiological study. And he published his results, and then he ended up writing a book called The China Study. Just a fantastic book. All right, and that gets to where I'm at now. There's a gentleman named Mark Mattson, M-A-T-T-S-O-N, and he wrote a book about internet fasting, and he's also done, he's put this all together with the science, and he's done his own science with intermittent fasting and how it affects your brain. And with the brain, you got this thing called BDNF, these amyloids and glutamates and all this stuff, and how intermittent fasting is so good for the brain, good for the heart. You know, I watch these videos of these YouTubers who talk about the benefits of internet fasting. They say, oh, it keeps you more focused. You have more time in the day to do other things. You save money. All these outward things. But literally, internet fasting, I believe what it's doing for the body, if you want to sum it up, it would be probably millions of things to the good for the body. Incredible what this is doing. So his work, again, steeped in research and studies. Dr. Mark Mattson. And to sum everything up, what I've learned, and this has been a big thing because I've studied nutrition a lot through the years, but I've never come to realize it, because when people diet and they talk about losing weight, they talk about what to eat. Eat this or eat that, and that's how you lose weight. But it's so simple. It's almost hard to believe. But the way to lose weight is not to eat. It's not to eat ever. But with intermittent fasting, what you're able to do when you eat, and let's say you eat like regular food, fruits, vegetables, meat, whatever, what happens is the glucose goes into your blood, goes into your cells, and is used, and it gives your body energy. But then the extra glucose will go into your liver, stored as glycogen. It will also go into your muscles, and the stuff in your muscles will eventually, that goes for the muscles, and it's later on, as your body needs it, the liver will release the glycogen into your body. After that, you go into ketosis.